Hey guys, and welcome to the Indie Game Culture Podcast, a podcast about indie games. I am Cal, this is Malika, this is JT, and today we are going to be talking about indie games. What else? We'll be discussing games on the horizon, games we played recently, and we'll be doing a big old discussion at the very end. But before all of that nonsense, what you guys been up to?
Well, I think me and JT have you beat this week because we've both been to different conventions, so I'm pretty excited about that. Do you want to talk about you've been pretty hyped about Fanime? Do you want to go first, JT?
Yeah, I loved it. I went there. I got to see a bunch of my favorite artists, and at the very end of the convention, they have a thing called the Black Tie Ball, and basically it's a bunch of like formal dancing, like waltzing and tangoing and whatnot. And it's great because they take all of this video game music and make it kind of sound like James Dean, and
I love that.
it was really cool. It was really sweet. And at the very end of the dance, they had like the cha cha slide, and there's this one. They
Oh
said
yes, I love the cha-cha
but
slide.
they changed it around a little bit, and at the very end of this song, they said "slide to the left," and then they repeated it like I think 12 times, and they just threw everyone into the wall.
Just get
It was
everyone
hilarious.
smashed against the left wall.
Yeah,
Oh.
it was amazing. I got
Cha-cha
a
slide's pretty much the only dance I can do. That's why I like it.
it's they do a good job of letting you know what to do, and yeah.
Exactly, such clear instructions. That's what I'm there for.
Oh, it was so much fun. I got so much art. I met some nice people. I even met like a neighbor of mine, and
Oh really?
even there was a friend. There was a VTuber of mine. She had another friend from Canada that was visiting, and I think I met her, and it was very sweet.
Love that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a phenomenal time. It was definitely a top 10 weekend for me.
Wicked. Glad to hear it. I had a pretty action-packed weekend as well. I was doing media coverage for Portsmouth Comic Con, which felt very exciting. I had like this media pass badge. I got to skip all the queues and just show them my badge, and the security would like nod me on through. I'm not gonna lie, it felt good. I'm concerned about how good it felt. Like, oh God, is this what the billionaires feel like when they're looking over the little people? It's like me just walking through, skipping all the queues. But no, it was. I was surprised at how good a convention it was because I'm used to like the sort of larger London ones, and this one's like considerably smaller. So I was mainly just going because it's a 15-minute walk away, so I figured I may as well. But I genuinely really enjoyed myself, and I ended up, even though I was there for the full 2 days weekend, there was still some stuff I didn't get the chance to do. So they managed to pack like a lot into a smaller venue, and there were some really cool vendors with like amazing stuff, and I picked up some cool art. You can't see that one, which is the Bulbasaur one, but you can see the Spyro, and I love it. It's so cool. It's made out of perla beads and then like attached to a painted canvas, so it's got like a 3D effect. And like as soon as I saw it, I had to have it. I saw it and I was like, I need that, but I can't justify it. So I walked off and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So an hour later, I went back and I was like, yes, I will take the Spyro, please. And then the next day, I was regretting not getting the Bulbasaur, and I went back to her stall, and she'd literally made a Bulbasaur that morning. So I was like, all right, I'm not making the same mistake as yesterday. I'll take the Bulbasaur too, please. And I also got a Pokemon print headscarf. Give me 2 seconds. I'll grab it and show you guys.
Oh, yes.
You guys ready?
Oh,
It's Pokemon print, and it's so cute. It's got like Bulbasaurs and Cindersquills and Mudkips and all sorts. And I'm so
that's
looking forward. This is
adorable.
gonna be like anytime I'm going to a convention, I'm gonna wear that, and I'm super excited.
It's all very cute,
Oh my
all
gosh.
super cute.
You got some good picks.
Oh yes.
If
How
anyone
about
ever
you, Kel?
wondered, if anyone ever wondered where your disposable income went, that's
Oh,
where
exactly.
it
That's the thing. That's why I need to keep on writing, because I need to fund my merch habits.
goes.
Good stuff.
Well, I didn't go to a convention, but I did go somewhere. It was my first wedding anniversary, so we went over to
Oh,
Amsterdam and we had a lovely time. I may have done the thing that everyone does when you go to Amsterdam. You know the thing. We all know the thing. That's what I did,
The perfectly acceptable thing that shall not be named.
amongst other things. But it was a very nice trip. But yeah, that's the only thing I've really done of
Can't believe you
substance.
guys been married for a year already. It feels just yesterday you guys got married.
I know it feels like that way for us too. But then at the same time, we've been living together for God knows how long now.
Yeah.
We
that
got
sounds
home after our
wonderful.
first day of getting married, and we were like, "Well, that was nice, but I mean, it's the same."
Oh wow.
But yeah, other than my trip to Amsterdam, not an awful lot going on with me. I have been playing some games. I assume you guys have been playing some
I
games.
have been playing so much game stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Professional gamers in the room. We
Oh
are going to
yes.
be moving on to our first section, which is games we have been playing. Who wants to jump in with their first little list of games?
I don't mind. I mean, I've got a fair few, I'm not going to lie.
Well, why don't you kick us off then?
Okay, so Coffee Talk 2, like I mentioned last episode, last episode, I was really looking forward to it. So I got a chance to play it, and the stories are so cute. I really love it. I love they've introduced a bunch of new drinks, and I'm actually working on a drinks guide for indie game culture. So if any of you struggling filling out your brew pad, keep your eye on that space. It'll be up in the next couple of days. But yeah, like I'm not usually into visual novels, but I feel like because Coffee Talk intersperses it with the making of the drinks, it keeps my mind active enough. Plus, you can put it on autoplay. So I like sort of sitting there and just like watching it all unfold. And yeah, it's just got such a cute story to it. It's so cool. I love the diversity of the characters. So, if any of you don't know, Coffee Talk, basically you run your own coffee shop, but it's got loads of other drinks as well. And it's set in this kind of version of Earth where there's like loads of different races. So you have like elves, you've got like Scythes, like you've got all humans as well. You've got like, what are they called? I think they're called like Nico, something. People turn into cats, got werewolves, vampires, all sorts. And they all come together in this like multi-integral I've forgotten the word. What's the word when like it's integrated society? And yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And you get to hear all their stories and see the way their lives intertwine. And it's just really clever the way it builds the plot. And one thing they've introduced for Coffee Talk 2 is there's now items. So they might like leave something behind, or you might find something that you can then give them with their orders. And it's another way for you to interact with the story rather than it just happening like away from you, which is one thing that's definitely improved from the first one. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then I also played Ravenlock, which I mentioned I was excited for last time. I loved it. It was brilliant. It was like about 5 hours, knocked it all out in one go. And I was playing, and I was like, it feels so good to play a game just for fun rather than for content. Because like a lot of my gaming now, I don't know if you guys do this as well. Like I love my job. I'm so lucky to get to write about games for a living. But the problem is that because I'm lucky that my job is my hobby, but it also means my hobby is my job, and it's very hard to switch off that side of me that's thinking about content when I'm playing games. Yeah. So I was playing through Ravenlock, and I got it, and I was like, I was trying to do the last couple of achievements, and I looked online for a walkthrough, and I just could not find one. And I was like, you know what I could do? I could write that walkthrough, but the problem was I didn't have any of the screenshots. So after I played it for 5 hours on one day, I then had to replay it the next day, trying to go through as fast as I could for 3 hours just to get the screenshots and take the notes. So I've written like 8 separate guides for my website on Ravenlock, but I really enjoyed it. It's basically it's kind of loosely based on Alice in Wonderland. So it starts with you moving into a new home with your parents, and then you find this like dusty old mirror in the barn, and it transports you into this magical world where all these like animal friends are being terrorized by this evil queen, and you have to like learn new skills and find people and enter new worlds and collect this and that so you can go to the queen's castle and defeat her. And it's just really cleverly done. It's like I saw a few complaints about it being short, but I like that it's short. I think it works well for it. It doesn't drag the story out too much. It gives you like a really full-on immersive experience with like loads to do, because there's fighting, there's combat in it, there's exploration, there's loads of different achievements for you to get. And yeah, I really genuinely enjoyed Ravenlock. And even though I did end up redoing it for content, it was still nice playing it that first time through, just to play it and not have to think about how would I review it, what am I going to take notes for the guys. Like it was so fun to just completely lose myself in the game. And I really did lose myself. Like when I finished, I was like, oh wait, I'm back in my seat in my living room, because it felt like I was in this magical world. The graphics were so beautiful and vibrant, the characters were so like creative. And yeah, I would definitely fully recommend Ravenlock, especially if any of you have Xbox Game Pass. It's free on that, so really worth checking out Ravenlock. I'll take a little break from mine so you guys can talk about yours, and I'll talk about the rest of mine after.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. I love that kind of style.
It's really cool. It's really nice.
Well, I mean, I can jump in for one of mine because it kind of ties together with yours. So I played the first Coffee Talk. I've never played that before, so I played the first one. And I kind of had the same experience as yourself. I don't like visual novels because it kind of just all happens to you and you're not really doing anything. But this one is that little bit different because you get to do that kind of alchemy sort of thing.
It feels more interactive.
Yeah, and you get to kind of have the stories happen to you whilst you're actually having a small part to play in it, albeit
it really gets the balance, like right for those who like enjoy visual novels, but also those who aren't quite into them because of how passive they are. It just adds enough activity just to make you feel like you're not just watching a story unfold, you're part of it as well.
Yeah, and as well as that, like I thought the setting is it's a really cool thing, like this kind of weird mythological Seattle where all these different creatures are just wandering around.
It's strangely believable as well. I like that about it.
Yeah, and even it's kind of self-aware and almost fourth wall breaking to say that like it brings up race and says, imagine all of us were just one race or something like that.
Is it kind of like Zootopia a little bit? Like they're trying to bring some of those elements into that with everyone being like magical creatures and stuff? Or how'd you like
I don't think so. I mean, not because like they don't have like separate zones for different kinds of like races or anything. It's all very much fully integrated. It's just that there's sort of some like racism against certain races. Like people like might have certain opinions of like werewolves being like super aggressive or stuff like that. Or I think it's got like succubi and people like always assuming they're trying to like lead people on and manipulate them and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what forms the stories, and the stories are actually quite well written for the most part.
They're really sort of well developed. I like that they don't rush them, like because the game's long, you meet different characters on different days, and it sort of drags the stories out. So there's like loads of different. It's not just one story; it's a collection of different characters, and you see all of their stories progressing, and it's really cleverly done.
Yeah, so that was one of the games I played. I quite liked it. I was surprised how much I liked it.
Who's your favorite character in it?
I like Neil, the astronaut. He was fun.
Yeah, Neil's good fun.
But yeah, the reason why I got Coffee Talk is because I bought Coffee Talk too, and then after doing that, I looked online and said, "Should I play the first one?" And they were like, "Yeah, why did you consider not doing that?"
The second one would not make as much sense without the first one.
But I was like, "Well, now I have to buy it." So I was between a rock and a hard place there.
You know how you could avoid having to buy it? Get an Xbox and just get Game Pass and it's covered. I swear I don't get a kickback from Xbox. I just love it.
But I also enjoy platinums, and I platinumed that game, so I wouldn't have done that otherwise. Come on,
that's true.
That's my whole thing.
You've been smashing out the platinums this month.
8 last month, and 2 this month already. So
that's amazing.
You're gonna go for a record this month.
Well, I'd have to get 9, and that's a big ask.
You can do it.
You've got this, Callum.
We'll see. I've started playing a couple of AAAs, and you know what the story is there.
No.
That's like 40 hours.
Indies are where it's at for getting the 100%.
It's going to be a quiet month for indies. I can see it already. That's why the next section is going to be a little bit quiet on my side.
That's true. That's very true.
But to kind of keep moving on, I also played a couple of games on my Vita. I broke out the old PS Vita to give it a bit of love. None of them have all that much substance. So I played one called Midnight Deluxe, which is essentially like...
Is that one where you're like moving around a square and you got to like do the angles? Yeah, I played that.
It's essentially Angry Birds without the Angry Birds.
I'm guessing you did that pure... Oh, no, you're not doing it for the Platinum. Does PS Vita have Platinums on it?
They do.
I always forget that the Vita's a console, if I'm being honest with you.
There are only very select games that have Platinums. Like there's lots of ones that I own, but none of them have like Platinum.
Yeah, this looks like just like a copy paste of Flappy Birds in some parts.
Yeah, no, I got Midnight Deluxe purely because Xbox had like a challenge to get as much game as you can. So I got that one just like because I think it's like what, an hour for the thing, if that.
Oh yeah, it took me about 45 minutes to get that.
It's really quick circle finish it.
So I did that one. I also done one called Sound Shapes, which is actually something with a bit more substance. It was like...
I've heard of that one. I haven't played it myself.
I think it's PS Vita specific, as far as I know. Essentially, it was made by Santa Monica Studios back when no one knew who they were, and it's essentially a platformer where it's kind of the same style as like Thomas Was Alone and all that, where you just play as a little shape and you collect beats, and as you collect the beats on the platforming stage, they add to the sound, and it forms a full song by the end of the stage, and it's quite interesting.
That's cute. I like that. I mean, you had me at platformer, so
I'm a sucker for like emotional music, so I feel like that would really get to me. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. And then it also kind of has like a Little Big Planet sort of vibe to it. It doesn't anymore because the servers are down.
I miss Little Big Planet. I love Little Big Planet.
Well, with Sound Shapes, basically you could create your own sound shapes and create your own platform stage. Brilliant. So you could go and collect them all.
The creative mode of Little Big Planet was like, I used to spend hours upon hours as a teenager. I used to like making like army obstacle course type ones. It was great.
Yeah, if there's a creative mode, there's a few hours that you could definitely lose yourself. But the one thing about Sound Shapes I did not enjoy is there is a death mode, which is essentially all of the previous levels in the story. Well, not story, but like the campaign. There's an extra set of levels where you have to do like these challenge platformers, and they're really difficult, and they're timed, and they're very RNG based. So essentially, you just have to hit your head against the wall until it works, because there's a lot of random aspects to it. But I got it done. A lot of swearing happened, but I got it done.
That's what matters. That's what counts.
Yeah. and then the last one that I played on my Vita was I went and actually finished Undertale again, because I didn't have the trophies for that in the Vita.
Which ending did you get?
I didn't get the ending because I got all the trophies before the ending, so I stopped.
Okay. It's like I don't need to finish this game. I've done the important part.
Isn't
I got an ending years ago. I can't remember.
Isn't the joke like the trophies is like you collect items and then it's 3 trophies? Or I remember there's a joke.
No,
in
so
that on the Undertales.
there's trophies for like every stage up to like the very end, and it kind of just gives you them periodically. And then there's also like a set of 16 trophies for like, do you know the little dog donation station?
Yes.
Every time you give to the dog X amount, you get a trophy, and you do that 16 times.
How many trophies are there?
I think it's like 30 something.
That's not too many.
That's kind of impressive for Undertale.
Yeah. So you don't need to try very hard to get them. To be fair, you don't have to go out your
when
way.
I played Undertale, it's that what's that? Is it Tamriel, the woman who rescues you? Toriel.
Yeah.
When she fights you to see if you're ready, I didn't realize backing out of the fight.
Oh no.
I didn't realize I had a choice to leave her alive until afterwards. And I was like, what have I done? I felt so bad. But she's like, come on, keep going. You can do it. I'm like, okay, I'll kill you if I have to.
Well, yeah,
it reminds me when I played Call of Duty the first time. And there's that one mission where what's it is? He's being like attacked downstairs, and he's saying, run and save yourself. So that's what I was hiding upstairs, because I thought that's what the mission wanted me to do. I didn't realize it wanted me to disobey orders and go down and rescue him. So I was like listening to him just being absolutely murdered whilst I was upstairs hiding under a table going, I'm so sorry, I'm letting you die.
He's like, go on, we'll fight me. And you're like, okay.
If a character tells me to do something, I do it, okay?
Oh, that scene devastated me. I still didn't realize Undertale could be like that cutesy of a game. I was trying to guess at the tone of the game, and I was like, wow, this is a really dark game. And there's a scene later on where Undyne, there's she stabs Monster Kid, but Monster Kid is fine, but I thought Monster Kid was dead. And I was like, well, this game is unredeemably dark. And then Monster Kid was fine. It's like, wait, what is this game? And eventually I finished, and I was like, oh wow, this was wonderful. But yeah, it really had me going there for a while. I was like, what? I didn't know what to make of Undertale.
I vaguely remember the first time playing, I tried to go out of my way to be a pacifist, but this time I had to make gold to give to the dog, so I was like, I was going to kill everything. So it was a different experience for sure. And then the other ones are the ones that I have... no, wait. I didn't review one of them, and I want to talk quite extensively about it because I think it's fantastic. I played Norco, and it is it's something else. It's a really, really good game. So it's your typical text-based point and click sort of D&D style adventure, your Citizen Sleepers and all those. But the way that the story's told it's really fantastic. So it's based in southern Louisiana, and it's somewhat true story in the sense that it kind of satirizes the whole situation of a town called Norco in Louisiana. It's a real place, and it's where Shell in real life is based. So they've got their huge oil
company.
The petrol company.
Okay.
So that town is basically perpetually getting done over by all this nuke and spillage and all this awful stuff, and it's stuck in a state of arrested development because there's so many financial things, and everyone's living in terrible housing, and there's floods all the time, and it's just a horrible place to be. So essentially that pokes fun at that, and it's a quite sad story, but it's also one that's got this dark, gritty sense of humor to it as well.
Yeah.
Like, for example, you can buy drugs off Santa, and if you and he
No.
Wait, as in a person dressed as Santa or the real Santa?
so it's a guy dressed as Santa. That whenever
Okay.
you play at mild spoilers, but whenever you're in like the town at the start of the game, I think it's in the second act. I'm not 100%. You go into town. There's two homeless people on the street. One of them is genuinely homeless, and one of them is Santa. And just by the interaction, you can tell this person is just trying to scam money. But if you give him $1, like in that instance, and then come back later for something, he will give you drugs because you're trying to buy drugs off him for another thing you're doing. If you don't, he will spit in your face.
Oh no.
Oh.
So it was really funny, but it's a very dark sense of humor that it has, and it's very, very good.
Yeah, it's almost the one I ruled out because it doesn't look cute enough and it looks too depressing.
Yeah, and it's also kind of got like a sci-fi feel to it as well, because it kind of does this uncanny valley sort of thing with cryptocurrency, and it has like these birds shooting laser beams, and it's all it's got a lot of blasphemy in there. Like it's a game that pushes the envelope in a lot of ways, but it's really fun to play.
Yeah, no, I love that surrealist art style that like you mentioned the game, and I was like, wow, this is like, it's very in the vein of like Disco Elysium in that regard.
Yeah,
and
it's a game. The artwork existed, I believe, 6 years before the game did, because the person was like going through and building his own sort of database of what this game's going to look like.
That's so cool. I love when there's like so much like imagination and creativity gone into the process of creating a game. I think you can really tell when a developer's got that passion for what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that I find most intriguing about it of all, like, you know how like there's a lot of games that go, all your choices count. But they don't necessarily mean that. With this game, you have a lot of choices that you can make, and they're essentially asking you what you feel about a situation, and it doesn't change the events that happen, but it changes how your character views them. So if someone brings up a particular character and you've answered something before, you'll then have this perception of them, and your character will answer, oh, well, they're a dick because I don't like them, or I actually feel quite sorry for them. I see them as a victim, and it's because you've answered that beforehand.
So the game remembers all your choices.
Yeah, but it never makes a point of it. It just does it. It's great.
Clever. I like that.
You can role play as yourself, basically.
Or you can roleplay as someone entirely different from your own viewpoint. It's great.
That's
so
wonderful.
that's probably the standout one for this month for me. Like if I knew that game existed whenever we were doing our best of 22 list, that would have been on there, because it's something else.
Fair play. High praise.
Oh, I have some family in Louisiana. My grandpa was mayor of Shreveport like forever ago, and
Your grandpa was a mayor?
Yeah, he was a mayor, and
that's so cool.
But yeah, I get to go visit there every other summer, and it's so much fun, but it's like very different too in some regards. But yeah, it kind of makes me want to like go to the town of Norco and say like, oh, I played through the game in your area. So I feel about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have roots in Louisiana, all the more reason to play it.
Oh, wonderful.
And then there's two that I reviewed. So one of them is called Top D and 2D, which is a game that's about 2 years old. It's been out in PC, came out for console, so I decided to give that a quick review.
Is that the one where you switch between perspectives?
Yes, so it's 2D and 3D, and
and you like move the boxes, so then when you flip the screen up, that one looks really cool.
Yeah, it's a very nice game. So it kind of takes the same kind of vibe as Super Paper Mario, where you can switch between the 2D and 3D to solve puzzles. It's pretty straightforward, but the thing that I like most about it is it's very co-op friendly. Because
I bet.
You can play it solo and it's completely fine, and you don't really lose a lot of the experience, but playing it with an extra pair of eyes and a different perspective is also really good. And the fact that you have that one assigned role in that one plane is pretty good.
You only have to think in your own section.
So that was a cool one. And then the last one that I played is a game called Killer Frequency, which I reviewed, and it's very, very good. I gave it, I believe it was an 8.5 because I thought it was fantastic.
That's very high for you.
Right.
You're like super harsh with your marks, so that's impressive.
Yeah, I just thought it was. It's going to bleed into what we're talking about later, because I believe this game is one of those games that have taken the trend of the walking sim and tweaked it to make it something completely different. So it is very similar in terms of its mechanics to Gone Home, where you're basically the setup is you are in like an 80s radio station and you're a late night radio DJ and there's a killer on the loose.
Oh,
It plays into those like slasher horror movies of like you know the ones.
Yeah, the ones I avoid because they're horrible.
Yeah, those ones. Well, yeah, basically it plays into like the kitschy side of all of those, and it has you play as this like radio DJ that's been in Chicago for years, played to millions, and now he's in this backwater town in Middle America, and he's playing to like 40 people, and the killer is on the loose. It's killed the sheriff, and now the deputy is away to the closest town, meaning there's no one to man the 911. So you, being the radio DJ, that have to do that, and everyone is basically ringing in, going, "The killer's after me. The killer's here," and you have to try and
oh no.
you have to essentially save them in these particular scenarios. So it's basically like a puzzle
Sounds
game.
intense.
Yeah, I love this already.
Yeah, it does sound really cool, to be honest.
It is. It's basically a puzzle game with stakes, which you don't get to see very often. Usually puzzle games are, you can take as long as you want, but the puzzle's going to be hard. This one is, the puzzle isn't all that hard, but you're going to have to do it in real time. So and if you don't, someone dies. So it's fun.
Yeah, that's high stakes indeed.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And it plays into like the 80s vibes. It's very Stranger Things in a lot of ways. It's got all like the antiquated tech. Like you also have to manage the radio show alongside you doing all of these things. So you're still putting on vinyl to play records, and it's got its own individual soundtracks. You pick up a record, put it in, and you play your ads via cassette tapes, and it's all very cute. I do like it a lot.
Oh, it sounds so juicy. I want to stick my teeth into it. Oh my gosh. I just love that you're the like DJ along the 911 person, besides how you're doing both at the same time.
Yeah, it's just moonlighting.
Yeah. And as well as that, like there are certain moments, like it's certainly not something that's prevalent for the entire thing, because it does play on the lighter side of things. But whenever it's time to go horror mode, it does ramp it up a little bit. It does make it a little bit creepy. So if you're like exploring the station to go and get like a record that was stolen from reception, you have to go down there and grab it, and suddenly you hear a bump in the night, or like the door screeching or whatever, and you're like, oh, he's here, oh, I'm dead. But there's never any threat, but the atmosphere it creates is really, really good.
Oh, that gets me. Sometimes like just the idea of there being something rather than there actually being like a monster or anything is worse. Like actually, sorry, do you have more games, Callum? Actually,
I do not. That was my whole lot. Much shorter than last time.
How about you, JC?
Yeah, well, actually, I want to segue off of that is that I actually ended up playing No One Lives Under the Lighthouse that you had mentioned last time, Callum. And I thought it was interesting. It was like, it's very metaphorical, but it's funny because there's times where they'd show the monster and times where like that you would get hinted at the monster. And it's like that, just the idea of there being something out there was scarier than actually, seeing the monster. But like there's this one bit where you go under the lighthouse and there's a like just you hear this breathing and you have to like go forward and grab some oil and get out of there, and I was losing it. But it was a very confusing game because it got very metaphorical. Like I thought I understood the game, and then it turns out like it was either potentially a person's dream or nothing was actually happening. And
is it one of those games where you finished it and you're like, okay, Under the Lighthouse story explained, Google?
I did, and then there was like a couple of pages said like, oh, this wasn't real. This was all this man's head. He was mourning the loss of his son. I was like, what? But how was I supposed to take that away from this?
It always sucks when it's just a dream. It's a cop out.
It is a cop out. It is cowardly. Commit.
But for what it was, I loved that. Like I just saw the movie The Lighthouse a while ago. Like the kind of, it was the black and white film it was new, but it was made with the a couple of actors that I loved, and it was like a horror movie that was really well done. And I love that it was very inspired by that movie. It felt like in some parts, I was like, yes, I got to play as that lighthouse keeper, and I love that. But it was definitely, I don't know if it's the horror game for me. I walked away very confused. I was scared, and it got me at some points, but it was just, this is definitely somebody else's game. I can tell.
Yeah.
And I would have to say, like, I've only looked at it from an artistic point of view, like the PS1 demake graphics. That's the thing that stood out for me, and I feel like that would just add to the affair. Like, it would just
Oh yeah, that
like I've saw things like, I think it's Siren Head that kind of does the same thing with the PS1 demake graphics, and it's basically Slender Man, but because it's in that like really grainy pixels, it's like it's even worse.
yeah. There's a bit like where you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, "Wow, I don't look like a person," but it's kind of cool to its own regard. It's a little bit like Paratropic. If you've ever seen that, where it's like these kind of copy pasted images onto a person's face and it looks like it's stretched out, so it looks like it's trying to be a person, but it's not, kind of thing.
Interesting.
But
That
yeah,
sounds creepy. I hate when things look kind of human but aren't. It totally freaks me out.
it messed with me a lot. And I made the mistake of playing a little bit of FTL, which I love the game, but it's a mistake for me because I can never play a little bit of like FTL Fast and Light. It's a really addictive
dear.
sci-fi roguelike. If you guys know, I
Yeah,
assume
I've
most
definitely heard
people
of
know.
FTL.
I played a little bit of that. I ended up playing, I think, like 5 hours of it one day. I was like, I need to stop. This isn't good for me.
Oh no.
And gosh, I ended up not indie game, but I binged all of Kingdom Hearts 3 a while ago, earlier this month, to get some footage, and it was interesting. It was nice playing an easy game after playing a lot of Dark Souls, where it's like I was just kind of handed the victory. Although at the very end, you get thrown around by the antagonist Xehanort, like just get ragdolled, and it was kind of humiliating. And then I played some Pummel Party with friends for a birthday, which is fun. I think I mentioned it last time, but it's kind of like a violent Mario Party. And like every action, like you can shoot your friend and their body just ragdolls, or a bunny will sneak up on you and just murder you, and it's kind of horrifying and hilarious. And it was definitely a great way to celebrate a birthday. So yeah,
Sounds it.
but that's
Well,
been it for
I'm
me.
actually going to jump in. If we're doing games that aren't technically indies, I want to just float this and see what you think.
Okay.
I did play Lord of the Rings Golem.
Yes.
Oh
didn't
god,
even
yeah, I
hear
forgot
about
you
this.
forgot you had to do that. You have my sympathies.
Callum, tell me about the bird egg puzzle. I have heard things about it. Did you get that far?
So I played the whole thing. It was fun.
How long was it, the whole thing?
It should be about 5 hours. It's about 20.
Oh no.
You put 20 hours into it.
I did because
Why?
I thought there would be some sort of substance or at some point, and there just never was.
At what point do you give up and say, "Come on, this is enough"? For me, it's an hour.
Well, listen, whenever you're gonna give something that low of a score, you need to be pretty sure of yourself.
That's
And
true. That's
Oh.
fair.
I gave it a 2.5, which is
Oh.
That is brutal. That bad.
one of the lowest scores I think I've ever gave.
I'm guessing for that score, is the movement bad as well in that case? Like the actual mechanics must be bad as well, surely, for it to be that low.
A lot of the things don't work as they should do. The most competent thing is probably the kind of Uncharted-esque platforming. It sort of works okay. You do end up like jumping and just kind of magnetizing to the platform rather than jumping, and it's not good at all. Like
that would really annoy me.
Yeah, that
but like that's the most competent aspect of it. The rest of it is dreadful. Like
is it worse than KO in your mind?
Yes.
Oh wow, you must really hate it.
It's just there's so many things wrong with it, and it just has no respect for Lord of the Rings as a franchise either. You can the only thing that I could give it any credit for was the sound design, which was actually pretty good. Like they took the time to go in and get the dialect for Orcish and Elven and put that in and actually have people talking in those different languages, and the ambient sounds decent. The actual score, whenever it's mixed all right, is good. Usually it's not implemented very well, so even that comes as a mixed bag, but the sound design is really good. There's some good voice acting. There's some terrible voice acting also. But that's the only thing I can really say that was good.
Do you think the developers knew how bad it was when they put it out?
I would be very surprised if it was ever QA tested.
Really?
Because if it was even QA tested by a small select few, they would have noticed some things. There's some things that you just can't have in there for a finished game. Certainly not a game they charge £50 for.
I just can't believe it's been that big that's this bad. Like, you'd think someone along the process would say, hold up, we need to do something about this.
Yeah, it's one of those that I feel like, I think it was in development hell and it got delayed quite a lot, and it's got this stage where they had a deadline, they needed to push it out. But in the state it was in, I don't think they should have even bothered pushing it out, because
Oh,
Daedalic Games it's going to go under because of this. Like there's no way
They
anyone's
had a
going to.
good reputation before this as well. Like, it's not like it's some really rubbish studio. Like, Daedalic's pretty decent.
Yeah, they've done some modest stuff like the Depona series and a couple of other things. Like they're not like
Yeah, they're not like
huge.
amazing, but they weren't known for creating garbage. Whereas now they're going to be associated with that awful Golem game.
Yeah, and it's I don't think it's necessarily their fault. I think it's down to probably the publishers, Nacon, who have essentially said, "Get it out the door. Don't care what it looks like. We're going to make our money back on this somehow." And I would be very surprised if they even get a quarter of what they put into it.
do you think it could have? Sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say that like there's clearly a lot of budget been spent on this. They've clearly tried to do something here, and it's just not came off at all. Like even when you look at the story. I'm one of the few, because I feel like the majority of people are saying, why would you even want to play as Gollum? Why would you want to be that character? I'm like, no, in the right hands, that could have been very good. It's
Yeah,
a
it
very
does sound like
complex,
it has an interesting premise.
Yeah,
he's a
like,
complex character. He's got like two different sides to him. There's lots of things that you can do, and you could really lean into the darker, really horrible side of that character and do something a bit more avant-garde. They tried to humanize him, and they tried to like do all these RPG tropes and give you the choice of good or evil, and it was crap.
yeah. I want to ask, like, do you think it could have been a better game if they'd had more time and were able to like polish it? But like, if they weren't able to lean into the story stuff, I don't know if it's like it's just kind of wasn't going the right direction.
I feel like they didn't have a good format for a game to begin with. I don't think that they went the right way about it, because essentially it is bare bones stealth and platforming, and that's all there is to it. Everything else is like boring, busy work, and there's nothing of substance, and the stealth is piss poor. It is really bad. But like I feel like I went through it, and there were certain sections where I was like, there has to have been a section there that they didn't get finished, because there was just a huge gap where there was no context, and I was like, it's not even a case that they've just messed that up. Something was meant to be there, and it's not there. So I think to an extent it was rushed out the door. They didn't get to do what they wanted, but even if they did, it would still be just as bad.
Yeah. When it first came out with all the negative reception, I thought that it might have been because there were a lot of hardcore Lord of the Rings fans that just didn't like the way it came out. But then I saw some more of it, and I was like, okay, this feels kind of deserved.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've seen like some video reviews, and I'm like, oh my, that's what they put out. Like it just looks so bad.
What I do after I put out reviews, I go and look at everyone else just to kind of get.
Yeah.
I don't go and copy it. Mine's already out the door, but I go and see if I was right, essentially.
Yeah.
And
it's like whether you're too far against the grain or something.
Exactly, and I don't feel like I was, but there was a thing that I noticed. There was a correlation of professional reviewers that were just absolutely throwing at the dogs and saying it's awful, but there were a small selection of pretty much exclusively Lord of the Rings fans that were like, do you know what, the game's terrible, but from a lore perspective they tried to do something quite interesting, and they like certain aspects of
it. That's interesting, especially if they're coming at it from a different angle.
Yeah, so clearly there was some sort of seed that could have grown. It never sprouted at all.
Oh dear.
And it was awful to play.
My sympathies, Callum.
It was a slog.
Like, Did you have any more games, JT?
That was pretty much it. I played some Dark Souls 3 and went through it and took some silly photos. Like I did like the poses and fun stuff. 3. But I think if you do a lot of like poses, that makes the game like less grim. But like just like go to an enemy and just to wave at them, it just like it took it out for me. It's like, oh, okay, I feel so much better now. And but yeah, that was pretty much it for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Lots of games, lots of things we have been doing.
I haven't done my old games yet. I need to finish
you don't have? You don't have.
So I carried on with Death or Troops. I started last week, and yeah, you were right. I did genuinely enjoy that first hour when everything felt new and exciting, but then it stopped feeling like that because they just every time it's exactly the same, and it just got too repetitive, and I was like, give me something. And even the new weapons don't really do anything different, and I was like, yeah, okay, I definitely get what Cal was saying. There's nothing more, and it's just really frustrating every time you unlock a new building and you don't get anything new for it because you've got to then buy the stuff in it. It really annoyed me. And then I decided to go back to finishing the DLC for KO, which I was like, yeah, I love KO. This is great. And I finally put my foot down and said, you know what? I cannot excuse it anymore. The latest DLC was bad. And I hate saying it because I love KO as a concept. I love him as a character. I enjoy the main game. I enjoyed the Oh Well DLC. But the Bender Rules DLC is broken. And I just rage quit it because the levels are too long. They should not be that long. And they're not long because they're like artificially difficult in that it's the mechanics screwing up that's taking so long. And what made me mad was I went 20 minutes into a level, slipped off a platform, got stuck behind the platform, and there was no way out. It's like, this should not be possible. I like glitched through a wall, got stuck behind the platform, and I was like, I couldn't do, and I had to quit out the game because you can't like reload the checkpoint or anything. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I can't. The music randomly cuts out. Things will glitch in and out of walls. Enemies will appear and disappear, and I can't anymore. So like at this point, it's just lazy because a lot of these issues have been present since like the main game was released last year, and it's like you have the time to fix this. You're putting out all these DLCs, just fix the core mechanics first, and then put out the DLCs. And yeah, I'm done. I'm done defending them. I am. I've also played Planet of Lana, which I reviewed for Indie Game Culture, but I'm going to save that for the last segment of this podcast. But one game I've been playing loads of and absolutely loving is Cassette Beasts. Now, have either of you guys heard of Cassette Beasts?
Yeah, so I've heard of Cassette Beasts. I haven't played it because it's not on PlayStation because nothing ever is. But I commissioned a review for that one because it looked very good.
Oh.
It is absolutely brilliant. Like, so basically, it's kind of similar to Pokemon, but it's not a ripoff at all. Like when I was like watching the trailer for it, I was like, oh, so it's a Pokemon ripoff, but it really isn't because so many of the core mechanics are different. So you basically are in this world exploring and finding different creatures and like collecting them and stuff. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. Like the whole style of combat, it's pretty different. So instead of just having 4 moves that you can switch between, you have so basically you don't capture animals. You collect their essence in like cassette tapes, which you then play and turn into the animals yourself. And the cool thing about that is that you don't have to collect animals at a certain level. Whenever you catch them, you just get their tape and then they will be whatever level you are. So you level yourself up, and then that means you're not limited to only choosing the beasts that are the same level as you. It means you can choose literally any from the entire catalog because they will automatically become your level. And they've also got stickers, which are kind of like TMs, and basically they're the moves that they can use, but instead of just being the physical and stat moves, it's also got passive moves, which are kind of like a Pokemon's hidden ability type things, and you can like peel them off of cassettes and put them onto them and like reuse them as much as you like. So if you catch a beast that's got a move, you're like, oh my god, that move's so cool, you can just take it off of that and put it onto the beast that you like. They've all got the same base stat number, but the different beasts will have it spread out in different areas. There's range attack, melee attack, speed, HP, all of that, and like trying to collect your team as well as look at the different types. And type advantages kind of work similarly. So it's not so much that they'll do extra damage because they don't, but what happens, so for example, if you use a fire type move against a wind type character, it will hit, but then the fire will create like a spire of air that acts as a wall to block the incoming attack. So if you attack an air type with a fire type, you'll do the damage the first time, then you're also going to give them extra defense. And it's stuff like that that's really cool. It introduces like new types. So there's astral, which is kind of like spacey, and they can use like loads of mystical attacks. There's plastic, because all of the beasts are kind of based on concepts from the real world, and the way the plot develops is basically people have been plucked out of time and space and put onto this new land called New Wirral, and basically it's about trying to figure out how to get back and how to adapt to the world. So that all the beasts are kind of weird interpretations of things from our world. Like even with the cassettes, like it's stuff that's come from our world and been transformed to like magical possessions in this world. I just think everything about it is really cool. There's loads of quests you can do. So you start out The map's pretty large, not huge or anything, but it's larger than I thought it would be. And you start out in a very small section, and you unlock more of the map as you traverse, and you can collect skills like gliding, like surfing, like you can turn into like this ball of vines to roll up walls. And all of this is done by collecting beasts that have those special abilities. So, for example, to get the gliding, you have to catch a Dominoth, and then you'll turn into like a moth to do the gliding. And it's just so cool and clever. The way it builds, you've got different rangers who want to join the Rangers Guild. So you have to defeat the different champions. So you can do them. You got to find them throughout the world. And like, honestly, it's so much larger than I was expecting. Like, because it's an indie game, I just thought it was going to be like a quick 8-hour thing. It's not. You can like, if you're just doing the main story, sure. But like, if you're actually going for completionist like I am, it's a good 20, 30 hours. And yeah, I'm nearly done now, but I'm absolutely loving it. It's absolutely fantastic. I'd fully recommend it if you've got access to it, because up until now, like, if you want to play something good that's Pokemon like, you can only do Pokemon on the Switch. So I think this is giving people a chance who don't have the Switch, sorry PlayStation users, but to actually play something that's got the essence of Pokemon without just being a copy paste version. And it's just, I really genuinely rate this game. It's fantastic, one of the best games I've played in a long time.
Yeah, well, with pushing my nose to the glass to look at it, essentially, that's what I took from it, that they're actually breathing life into this genre that's been monopolized by Pokemon. And to be honest, Pokemon's been resting on its laurels for years and years.
Yeah.
Using
Well,
the same
exactly, because
format.
Pokemon can get away with doing the same thing every time because there's been no competition, whereas this actually introduces a lot of new concepts that aren't available in Pokemon and genuinely work better, in my opinion. Like, for example, with the you level up as a player and not, I think that's absolutely genius way of doing it, because you still need to have the beasts in your team so you can evolve them or remaster them because they're cassette. Oh, I forgot to mention the shiny system. The shiny system is brilliant. So they're called bootlegs, and basically it's not just like a visual difference. There'll be a different typing and they'll look different in the wild, and they'll kind of like glitch out, and then instead of their name being in black, it'll be in red, so you can see immediately that it's a bootleg. And basically it means they'll then have access to a completely different set of moves from the new typing. So you might catch something that's usually like electric type and has those stats, but then you'll then be able to get it as a grass type or a plastic type or something. And it's just such a clever way of doing it. But they're not as rare as shiny, so I don't know exactly what the rate is. I reckon probably about 1 in 100 based on my experience. And I've missed out on 2, and it's so annoying because one time, one of my characters, I forgot it had a passive move that would do a second attack, so it just killed it. And then the other time, I was already really weak from a fight when I got there, and then it killed me, and it broke my heart. But I think the rarity rating is just right, because with shinies, they're so rare that you might, if you're lucky, encounter 1 throughout the game. Whereas with this, you're going to encounter a couple throughout the game, and it's really exciting. You still get that excitement because it's not so common. It's like, oh, it's another one of them. It's like, oh my God, I found one. But you still get that every like 2 or 3 hours, and I think it's just really good.
Oh man, did you have a favorite?
Can you tell I like the
beast?
game?
Yes. But did you have a favorite like cassette beast, if that's what they're called, or
Yeah.
like which one was it?
Ooh, it's a tough. I really like. There's this one called the Allseer, which is kind of like this floating robot, and when it evolves, it turns into something called Tri-Things, which is kind of like a 3-legged robot type thing. But I find it's got the most diversity in terms of the moves it can use, because it's got access to metal type moves, astral type moves, normal type moves, some grass types, some fire types. I really like that. And then also my starting beast was called Candevil, and I've evolved it now to Miasmodius, and it's really powerful. I love the look of it, and it's just been with me from the start, so I just naturally feel strong to it. But there's some like really clever ones as well. So there's one called it was called Cloxley, and then it evolves into Robin Dam, and it's based on Robin Hood. There's another one that's a really good reference, and it's complete. There's one that's like based on a stained glass window called Glass Stain, and you find it inside a church, and it's just, they're all such clever designs. I really like it.
Oh, that sounds phenomenal.
Yeah. It's really good. It's like, it's genuinely is an answer to Pokemon that isn't just a blatant rip off to the point it's not fun. Like pretty much all the other games I've seen in this genre are just reskinned Pokemon, whereas this is such a different, well thought out design that clearly, obviously, had Pokemon as inspiration, but didn't just use it as the blueprint. It's got its own design with Pokemon as inspiration, rather than let's do Pokemon but with our own designs. And I really love it. Really genuinely think it's one of the best games that I've had in a long time.
The only hole I would poke in it, and it's not something that I know exists or
Yeah.
not, so I'm going to ask you: does it have any sort of like multiplayer functionality?
I don't think so at the moment. I don't know if it will. I'll be honest. I think because of the way it works, it might be a bit awkward to integrate multiplayer into it. Just because, like I said, like with the type advantages and stuff, they don't work in exactly the same way. It's very much. It works really well for the campaign. I can't see it working well for a multi. It's kind of hard to put into words exactly why it wouldn't work, but I don't really see it having that same like level of. I think because you can't like breed for hidden abilities or IVs, like I said, they all have the same base stat numbers. There's no like for example, because the one of the reasons I started playing it was because I'm doing a guide for indie game culture on the best cassette beasts. Now, what I didn't realize was that they all have the same base stats, so it is very much about getting into the nitty gritty of it because they all got. The lower ones will have like 600 total, and the other ones will have like 700. I can't remember exactly what it is, but basically, if they've got the same evolved level, they're going to be the same stats, just differently distributed. And I think because it doesn't matter what level you catch them, it's always going to be the same. It wouldn't work for multiplayer, but in the campaign it does work genuinely well, especially because you kind of bring along an assistant with you, like an NPC who comes along to the journey with you. And yeah, it's really cool, but it's very much a single player experience, I would say.
Yeah. I'd assumed that I didn't think it would be balanced enough to do multiplayer.
Yeah, it is.
It's a very hard
It is
thing
the
to do.
balancing. Like it's it's well balanced for the storyline. Like there's no balancing issues when you're playing it, especially because you do have that NPC. Like you control the NPC. Like they just walk around with you and have their own story. But in battles, you get to pick their moves and stuff. But yeah, if you were playing versus against a real person, I just don't think it would work the same.
Nice. I actually haven't played any Pokemon games yet, so maybe I can try this out to
Ever?
get into it.
Wow.
I've seen a lot of Pokemon, and I feel like I've watched hours of friends streaming it, and it's like, oh, okay, I think I understand
hold
it.
on.
I don't know. People
we
who'd
need
never
to
played
pick this
Pokemon
apart.
existed.
I never owned a Switch before until recently, and
What
I just
about
never
a
had
Game
a.
Boy?
I never had a Game Boy as a kid, and
What about a phone
So
and
sad.
ROMs?
I never played Pokemon Go.
How did you miss
So,
the Pokemon Go craze?
it went beside me. I played a bunch of indie games and RPGs and this, but I'm excited to try it out, and that sounds like a fun kind of intro game to
Yeah,
that kind of
definitely.
genre.
Seriously,
Maybe.
check it out. It's brilliant. It's genuinely brilliant.
Yeah.
You can't drop that bombshell on us. Just say,
I know. I'm still trying to process. JT hasn't played Pokemon. Like,
where have you been the last 20 years?
I've just been hiding under my shell, just playing the
evidently.
occasional game on the Xbox until I went to college and like had a gaming revolution. But yeah, I just never had anything I could play a Pokemon game with, and I heard of Pokemon Go, but it sounded like so much to get into for me, so I was like, I don't know. I had a bunch of cards for some reason, but and I watched like a couple episodes of the show, if that counts for anything.
It doesn't. I can't lie, JT. My opinion of you has just gone.
No.
Nah, I still love you, dude, but it's weird
Oh.
for me.
What you have to look forward to now is I'm going to be sending you a lot of illegal ROM hacks to download onto your phone.
Please do.
Allegedly.
Yeah, hypothetically, it's something we could do.
Oh, very much so.
Hello once again for our second section, which is indies on our radar. After that bumper section before, this one is going to be a little bit smaller. The reason being that June is not a very busy month in the world of games, very much in the world of indie games as well. And Summer Games Fest is approaching, which means everyone's being very quiet.
Excited for Summer Games Fest.
But that means up until that happens, we are going to be waiting for all these announcements that are inevitably going to happen 2 days from now. So we timed this really well. But yeah, we'll jump in with the games that are on our radar. I can go first because there's only a couple I've got on my list, so I'll jump in first.
I've literally got one.
Yeah.
Oh. But you know what? If you've got one, go with your one.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, like, the only other game that is on the horizon still hasn't got a release date. So one I'm looking forward to releasing on 13th of June is Dordogne, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it is so beautiful. This was originally supposed to release like a couple of years ago. Like, it's been being like, oh yeah, it'll be here very soon for ages now, and it's finally coming. And it's this gorgeous narrative adventure where it's like all kind of like watercolor-esque pictures, and like I'm pretty sure it's all hand drawn, and it just looks so beautiful, and it's just so calm and tranquil. You're visiting Dordogne, and it's just letting the story develop as you go through it. Watching the trailer, it looks like it's going to be so peaceful and interesting. And I do think I need that because I've had like quite a busy like month or so, and there's going to be a lot of games on the horizon because Xbox is doing their showcase on the 11th, which is going to be a Starfield showcase, but also a bunch of new games. So I know there's going to be loads being thrown at me. So I'm actually really looking forward to having a nice, calm, tranquil, all about the art and the peaceful music kind of game. So yeah, don't know too much about Dordogne because it's kind of really hard to actually tell what it's going to be about, but I'm pretty confident I'm going to like it. It looks like it's going to be peaceful, beautiful, and just calm, and I really need that. I'll be honest, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's one I had down on my list as well, and I'd assumed that you were going to bring it along because it's just one of those art styles.
Yeah, it's very much a Malika game.
It is. I kind of got that sense too that it's very hard to actually establish what the game is going to be.
Yeah,
in terms
like
of the story,
I've read the promo stuff for it. I've watched the trailer. It's still like I don't know what it is. I just know that it looks good.
Yeah. The selling point for the game clearly is the art style, and it's kind of like hand drawn, but it's based on like watercolor, and I believe the setting's like France. Dordogne is French.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of got that quiet French village sort of vibe to it.
Yeah, it's a very quaint kind of looking game.
That sounds so serene. I love it.
It does. It does seem like it's going to be a really peaceful, lovely adventure.
Yeah, so I definitely had that one down in my list as well, and
But yeah, like literally other than that, because the only other game that I know is coming that I'm looking forward to that's indie is the Plucky Squire, and there's still just says 2023. So until I get an actual date, I'm not going to talk about it. So yeah, there's literally nothing else. I'm not going to make up games that I'm not that fussed on. I'm the only one I'm genuinely planning on playing that's on the horizon is Dordogne.
Yeah, that's kind of the sentiment I have for most of the games. Like there are a couple of ones that were kind of interesting, but then I thought to myself, I probably wouldn't buy that, or I wouldn't even review it if I was handed it. Like there was one called.
Well, to be honest though, it's probably a good time for it because I've got such a backlog of games still. I didn't realize Game Pass has dropped a new Supraland game, and I didn't realize there was one being made, and I'm really excited to play the next one on that. So, and then a bunch of other stuff I want to play. I need to play all through Digimon Survive. I'm not enjoying it, but I bought it, so I want to play it anyway. It's like I put money into it. I've got to play it through just to get my money's worth.
It's a real special occasion when you're not playing off Game Pass.
I know. Well, it's because it was on sale, and it's like I like Digimon, and I thought I'd like it, but I don't. It's too slow for me.
These things happen.
They do. But yeah, no, Dordogne does look like it's going to be really, really cool. I'm looking forward to it. Just a week to go.
Cool. Well, I'm going to jump in with the ones I have. That was one of them, but there are two ones that are nailed on, and actually two that I think I'm going to mention because I was doing some Twitter diving to see if I could see if there were any way that I could bolster this list, really. But also,
I literally did the same. I was like, no, there's nothing that I'm looking forward to.
But there's a couple I found that have suddenly burst into life in terms of their Twitter feed, and I'm like, Summer Games Fest, they're going to be there. It's going to happen. So I'm going to try and call those. But before that, the ones that are genuinely coming out. So one's called VR Skater. I don't know if you would class it as an indie because VR, there's a lot of money pumped into basically any VR game. But VR Skater is essentially, it's exactly what you think it is. It's
another skating game for you.
That sounds really cool, especially on VR.
From a point of view in VR. And I don't know how the mechanics work because it's not really very well exhibited if you just look at the Steam, but it is essentially you from the point of view of a skater. You're in that first person and you're skating and you're doing tricks, and I think it's a set path and you're trying to get a certain score, very Tony Hawk's-esque, but I think it's going to be cool. At least it's going to be very gimmicky and I'm going to enjoy it all the same. So that's one. I don't know a ton about it, but I think it's going to be good.
Sounds fun. I used to love Tony Hawk's back in the day as a kid. Yeah. Like that was my jam.
The little Wii boards and
cheat codes. I feel like modern game consoles don't have enough respect for cheat codes.
Oh, they absolutely do not. If the game doesn't have a big head mode, what's it doing?
Exactly. What's even the point?
But yeah, that one looks cool. Another one that I think is going to be quite interesting. It looks very Resident Evil-y. It's the Grey Hill Instant, which is like a horror game, and it's very like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, basically aliens, and it's got it's very Resident Evil in the way it approaches things, in the sense that you've got a gun, you've got a way to fight back, but you've got your limited bullets, and there's a horror theme going on, and you meet these people, but they're quite twisted people, and it's kind of got that Resident Evil Biohazard vibe specifically to it, and that's the only Resident Evil game that I really super enjoyed. So I was like, ooh, okay, I could maybe jump in there and give that a blast. So the only thing that put me off was the aliens look like they look exactly what you're thinking when you think aliens. The big eyes, the big oval head. I was like,
are they green?
Yeah, probably. I think it's not, because every time you encounter them, it's outside. It's very dark, but I don't know if they're green or not. But I would assume they probably are. So that's the only thing that put me off, because I was like, how are you meant to take the horror seriously if they're just buggy aliens? Like, but everything else looks very cool. So I may give that a go. And then,
what are your predictions for Summer Games Fest?
My predictions.
Your predictions.
So, one of them is a game that I've been looking at for a while, and I don't know if it's going to burst into life, but I know that they recently brought a demo to a expo, and that means game might be complete or very close to it.
You say that they were demoing Tunic like 3 years before its release.
Don't say things like that. I'm trying to convince people over
here.
Go
on, go for it, Cal. Go for it.
So there's a game called Skim, which it's spelled SCHIM, and it's a game where you essentially have to traverse shadows. You're like this entity that could only exist in shadows. It's like a platformer of sorts.
It looks cute.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle platformer where you can only bounce from shadow to shadow to get to where you need to go. I can't remember what the narrative kind of plot point to get you from A to B is. I think it's someone stole your soul and you have to jump back into them or something. It's quite basic in that regard, but the actual gameplay looks fun.
Yeah. It looks interesting based on a quick Google search.
I love the artwork for it.
Although it also looks like the kind of game that's gonna get me so immersed that it's gonna be very trippy when I jump out again. I don't like sometimes with the puzzle games that are like have like really specific mechanics. It's like it saps my soul into the television, and it's really weird for me when I stop playing it.
That's like when it's hard for myself to remove myself from that game. It's like, wait, no, I'm here now. How do I get out of here?
Exactly.
So in this instance, you're going to be like bouncing around your room, just living in the shadows. I can't come out.
Pretty much.
So yeah, there's that one, and then the other one that I'm predicting might be very close to done because of two things. They are just in a showcase. Brought out, I think it's a brand new trailer on like Best Games Showcase. I think today, and then also the Twitter for that particular game was showing like a couple of people that were playtesting it. I've finished the game. It's about 30 to 40 hours long. There's clearly like a full game there, basically ready to go. It was delayed from early this year to now, and I feel like it has to be very soon. So it's Spirity.
I've heard of that. Why have I heard of that? Oh, hang on. I'm Googling that. It sounds so familiar.
So it's got like kind of Mother Earthbound sort of vibes to it. It's kind of based a little bit on Stardew Valley as well.
Was that one announced ages ago?
Yeah, it's been in the works for quite some time.
I feel like I was looking into it around like 2021.
Yeah, 2020, 2021 sounds about right.
Yeah, I think that's when I heard of it first, and I haven't heard anything since.
Yeah, so
I definitely want to play that when it's released.
It's something that looks very interesting. It's very hard to kind of describe what's going on there.
I don't care what's going on. There's a cat. It looks cute. I'm there. It doesn't need to do any more selling than having a cat there on the front page. That's all it needs.
Well, for everyone else's benefit, I'll try my best. Okay. So it's basically a game where you're kind of like a bathhouse manager in a world where there's spirits, and you have to go and do quests around the world, and you have to there's also that kind of like resource management aspect to it. As far as I know, I'm working off very little information because there isn't a lot there, but it looks very quirky, and I'm definitely going to give it a go. And the fact that someone said that it's 30 to 40 hours long really shocked me.
I'm surprised by that. It looks like it's one of those games that'll be like sort of 7-8 hours.
Yeah, just from the sounds of it, like apparently there's like 50 plus side quests, and there's lots of things to actually be at in the game. So I'm like, I'm pretty happy with that.
That reminds me.
It does look like it's going to be cool. I hope you're right. I would really like to play that.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's also topical because we recently done an interview with the creative lead for the game on indie game culture. So if you want to immerse yourself a little more in Spirity, jump over there.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I was thinking of Spirited Away in like the one section where you're like in the
Mm,
bathhouse for spirits, and I was like,
yeah,
oh, do you get
it
to
does
play
seem
that?
like it's yeah.
And
Yeah, well, that was one of the key inspirations for the game. If you read the interview, you will know this. But yeah,
Yeah, no,
um,
it does. Even just looking at like the graphics and stuff, it definitely does look like inspired by that scene.
mhm. So that is my lot, and some of those aren't nailed on to happen. So if they don't happen, don't come for me.
Blame Cal. Blame Cal.
oh.
JT, tell us.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have quite so many. I really just have two. One of them, though, I'm really excited for. It's coming out a little bit later in the year, though. It's called Nine Souls. I wasn't sure actually if we talked about it beforehand, but it was kind of a mix of Night in the Woods, Sekiro, and like Dead Cells kind of combat. It looked like, and it was
Okay.
phenomenal. It's like it has you play as a kind of a fox creature thing in this very kind of anime Japanese world, and it's with these kind of I'm blanking. What's the game where we plays the person ferrying the creatures to the other side?
Spirited Away.
Spiritfarer.
Spirit
Oh, so
Fair.
Spiritfarer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got
Like you
all
play
mixed
it's
up.
like very Spirit Fair graphics, and it looks
Oh, I
phenomenal.
love
And
Spiritfarer. That's
the
one
one
of my favorites.
the one thing I'm really scared of though is it talks about like you have to be able to like riposte and deflect enemy attacks, and I'm really bad at that in games. So I'm like, oh, this looks like a great game, but
Parrying
I
can
don't think
be
I'm going to be very
tricky.
good at this. And
Yeah.
yeah, I want to do some more research on it, but also I kind of don't want to look into it too much because I want like the story to be a surprise. But
Mhm.
it looks
Yeah.
really cool. And the other one I saw it's called My Little Blood Cult. It's looks like the game like the title's a little bit reachy, but it put me a lot of in mind of Cult of the Lamb a little bit, but like a little bit grimmer premise and more about like greater emphasis on sacrificing your followers and using it to sacrifice their blood to demons and monsters, and you're collecting books with that blood, and looks kind of grim. I really only like paid much heed to it because it reminded me of Cult of the Lamb, and I enjoyed Cult of the Lamb's like the graphic setting. I didn't think it was amazing, but it was interesting enough, and I loved like the animations for all of the
Yeah.
characters. So it had that appeal for me, and both those are coming out a little bit later this year. But yeah, there's unfortunately nothing else that for this month that I could find that really grabbed my interest.
Totally understand.
Okay.
Totally get it. Like,
It's a
I
very
think
dire
they're all saving, like Cal said, saving up for the Summer Games Fest.
Right.
It's all going to burst into life in a couple of days, and then this will
so
be a bumper
excited.
session next time. We promise you. But
I really, really hope they do what they did like in the last couple of times where they released like 40 different game demos. Like, I'm so genuinely excited
so
for
much
it
fun.
because Xbox have their idea Xbox, which is their indie section, and usually they will just like for Xbox they'll do it so you have access to like 40 odd different games for like an hour-long demo or something for like 2-week period to play as many as you can. And like I had the best time last time. I'm so excited for what they bring this time. Oh, I can't contain it. Like 2 more days.
listen, I'm excited for everybody, and for you two specifically. I really hope they bring Silk Song along. I really
Yes, please.
Don't get my hopes up. I cannot afford to get my hopes up. Okay, I just need to not think about it.
It hurts to just look like, oh, it'll come out later this year, right? Maybe.
It's gonna happen.
They shadow drop it, I'm gonna lose it. I'm like, yes.
That would be insane. Can you imagine? Because that's what
It'd be
I'm
riots.
low key hoping that's what they're gonna do with the Plucky Squire, because it still just says 2023, but Xbox was promoting it the other day. So there's a part of me that's hoping they're just gonna like announce it during one of the showcases, say, "Oh, and it's available today." I love when companies do that. It's like, oh, look at them being all hype. That is so cool. They'll like show you that like Nintendo does it all the time in their directs. They'll like show you this like 2-minute long trailer, say, "Hey, you know this game that looks awesome? Get it right now." It's like, what? Coming out of nowhere. It's that's the best.
Whereas PlayStation does it. You know this game that's on all the other consoles? Well, you can get it in 2 years.
Yeah, you guys need to step it up with the exclusives.
It's all we've got. It's all we've got. And it's a smooth transition into the third section, which is our big discussion. This time we are talking about, are walking sims dead? Are they evolving? What's going on with the walking sim subgenre? We're going to get into a little bit of discussion, probably an argument, and we're going to kick it off. Who wants to tell me, first of all, what your relationship with walking sims are? That's probably a good place to start.
My relationship with them is that I literally cannot remember any of them because I hate them so much that I try to put them out of my mind. If I have definitely played several walking sims, I could not tell you any details because they're too boring. Like, I don't want like this is one of those situations where I recognize it's a personal preference thing. I still maintain what I said about games needing to be fun. With walking sims, I think there is a place for them as long as that place is far, far away from me and my gaming because I don't get the point of them. It's like give me more to do. I want collectibles. I want action. I want adventure. Like even like for example, I was talking about Dordogne earlier, but at least with that, I don't know. It's pretty and cute enough to get away with it. But like the ones that are purely about the narrative, or like especially, I'll tell you what, the horror walking sims. Those ones, if they're not dead, they should be. Those ones are just ridiculous. It's like, oh, instead of actually bothering to get a cool story and background and adventure for a horror game, let's just put them around random corners and make you open a door and oh no, there's a monster. See, we've got our horror element done. There's no creativity, there's no excitement. Like I don't even like horror and that bothers me. But there is one walking sim I can remember. Well, it's not this is the thing. This is an interesting thing. I don't know exactly where to draw the line on what isn't a walking sim. So recently I played Planet of Lana, which markets itself as a puzzle platformer. Now, I will acknowledge there is platforming and there is puzzling. For me, it's basically a walking simulator with a few extra things along the way. But it's also really, really good, so I'll let it get away with it because it's got beautiful artwork, really fantastic soundtrack. Story's decent, not amazing, but it's okay. And the puzzles are frequent enough that it does feel like I'm more involved in it. Like there's some stuff that involves stealth, some stuff that involves thinking and solving puzzles. So even though the platforming aspects are literally just, oh, we're higher up than we were, oh, and now we're like there's no actual platforming skill necessary. So like, for example, a lot of the game, my fingers were getting tired. I was just using my chin to move my joystick because I didn't need to do any jumping or anything. It was literally just too much sway. There were too many parts of the game where nothing at all was happening except me walking in a straight line. And that is my issue with walking simulators. I find that a lot of the time, the exciting things happen few and far between, and there's not enough happening constantly. Like, even if it is just visual development. For example, The Artful Escape, you could argue that's close to a walking sim. But because there was so much visual difference happening in the back, so much soundtrack changing, there were enough story elements and you choosing different answers that it felt more active. So even though there was, like, it probably is realistically a walking sim, but it didn't feel like one. Whereas other games, they go too far into the artsy side of it. So it's like, here's a really quiet ambient soundtrack, here's pretty grey, gritty backdrop. That's not going to capture my attention because there's just nothing to it. I feel like if a game's going to be a walking sim, the other stuff that isn't the active part of the gameplay needs to be superb, because walking sims essentially take gameplay out of the mix. So you need fantastic story, fantastic art, and fantastic soundtrack to make a walking sim worth playing, in my opinion. Because if there's not enough gameplay elements there to keep me interested, I'm not going to bother.
Would you say that the game, if it's steeped in reality as a walking sim, you will not like it?
Yeah,
that's essentially the line.
If there's any, like, forget even steeped in reality. If it's more than like 20% reality, no, because it needs to be different. It needs to be different and exciting enough to make up for the lack of gameplay. Because I play games to play games. I don't play games to walk around and watch what happens on. It's the same reason I don't like visual novels. I need to feel like I'm part of the game. And if I feel like the game is just happening around me and I'm just moving my character to make it happen, I want to feel more involved in it. So if I'm not feeling involved in it, everything else needs to be superb, which is why I actually did give Planet of Lana a decent score, because like I said, everything else in it was superb. The puzzles were great. The art, I genuinely think it deserves to be nominated for best art direction because it's really, really gorgeous. The soundtrack, like as soon as I finished playing the game, went to Spotify, added it to my library because I love it so much. Like, it filled my soul with joy. Like, I can't describe how beautiful that soundtrack was. And because of all that, I will let it off just the walking part of it. But yeah, for other walking sims, I see other people playing stuff. It's like, I just don't have the patience. I just really don't. I think walking sims are definitely not for neurodivergent people. I need those constant dopamine hits, or I'm just going to lose interest real fast.
Perhaps not. Well, JT, what's your opinion?
All right, I have a very mixed opinion on them. Some of them I really like, and some of them I just can't stand. But for the most part, I really like them. And my biggest example would be the Stanley Parable, which it's, I guess you would classify it as a walking sim because that's the only thing you do. You do that and you
Yeah.
make choices. And the satire is just so well incorporated into the story making. And basically, the game is, I think we're all familiar with it, but it's a choices
Yeah,
matter
it's cool for
game.
20 minutes.
And and they released the deluxe version, which actually added like a whole another half to the game, which looks fairly interesting and pretty funny. I just watched someone else's playthrough of that part of it, but yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I feel like if walking sims are done well, they can be great. And also, I found that they take so much time to play too, and there's a game I really like called The Long Dark, and you survive in a
I've heard of
frozen
that one.
Canadian wilderness, and it's basically like global warming or global freezing happens, and everyone has like left this part of Canada, and you're surviving on your own. I'm talking about the survival mode. There's a story mode, but no one really plays it. And you just have to like keep yourself warm, make fires, like take naps in just random cabins you find. And I had a nice part where like I had a nice rest. I sewed all my clothes. I went to a cabin to sleep. I walked out. I felt great. I saw a bear and I ran back outside and was so scared. I'd sleep in there another day until the bear left. But a lot of that game, like, there was one point I was walking around for 20 minutes in the snow, just feeling terror, just looking for the next like place I can rest inside. And I love that the game was able to evoke that amount of dread out of me from walking. Like games like that, and even like the pathologic games where it's a lot of walking. You're just walking from point A to point B and just hoping you don't get murdered by plague or muggers or anything. And just for that to like just like evoke that feeling of dread or turn walking into something that makes me feel like either laugh or just feel really scared. I was very impressed, but also it's like if it's fun, I don't know if I've called fun, but I enjoy it in a way I can't explain.
I cannot express how little I want to play that game based on your description. I feel like I would genuinely rather watch the washing machine go round because at least there's more movement involved.
What I wanted to decipher is, they're the ones that you enjoy. What are the ones that you don't enjoy, and what about them does that for you?
Oh, for me, everyone that goes to the Rapture, I've seen that, and that just looks very boring because they're just storying at you the whole time, and that's it. You're never in any danger. You're just hearing a story, and that's fine. But I need some kind of stimulation for that to be more interesting. Like at least there's games like Firewatch where you play as a person watching for fires in this one region, and there's some like gameplay elements, and eventually the story kind of takes a little bit of a nosedive. But well, at least you're doing things to make it worthwhile. And if you're just getting story dad and there's no humor or no just kind of action you can do on your part, I feel like there's just nothing to work with there. But again, it can be fun too. It's a very weird mix for me.
Well,
And that's valid, definitely.
Yeah. I like
I will
freezing to
jump
death
in.
in Canadian wilderness. Let me have that.
Well, I'll jump in because I am, of the three of us, I think the kind of walking sim aficionado of the three,
I can
because
believe that.
I fell in love with them when were just kicking off. I think Dear Esther was probably the first ever one that existed in its traditional form, and it's something that you can't get away with anymore. That like the very, very traditional games like that, where it's just literally giving you story, exposition, and you walk. That doesn't exist anymore. You can't get away with that anymore. But at the time, I thought it was fantastic. It was like a little time capsule of art, and it was very scenic and very serene, and I loved it. But then on the flip side, you get to 2015, everyone goes to the Rapture, comes out. It's kind of the same thing. It's very poorly paced. The movement speed incredibly slow. It looks the part. It looks like you're like a really quaint Shropshire town, and it's gorgeous. But the story is quite meh, and like it just didn't hit the same. And it's because you can't get away with that anymore, because there were other games that came along that really changed the blueprint for what a walking sim is. Gone Home, I think, is the one that sets the benchmark for all the ones that came afterwards, because you're effectively not a part of that story at all. You're a random bystander finding out all of these things about your family, essentially, but you find it out through environmental clues, and you basically pick up every item and twist it around and go, what's this all about? And you pick up the story through the environment. No one ever tells you anything. You get the odd very mandatory like cassette tape to kind of push you forward, but other than that, everything else is a story you can either engage with or just go, oh, that's a book, and throw it to the side. And it's completely up to you. So I think that's a really good example of the best form of a traditional walking sim, and that's kind of the ones that made me fall in love with them. Now, what I will concede to is that they do not work anymore, and they shouldn't, because you can't get away with just doing that. You need to be a walking sim and something else. I think there is still very much a place for them, and I still think that you can do them and do them very well, but you can't do them in the traditional format anymore. So in that sense, walking sims as they were before are very much dead, at least as I see it. But there are a lot of games in recent memory that have done such good things with the format. Like one that I reviewed quite recently was Season: A Letter to the Future, which is a game where you are like a documenter of history as one era changes to the next and everything is forgotten. So you basically write history for those that come later, which means you go out into the world, you take pictures, you record sounds, and you just explore this world you've never seen before. And it's all very serene. You get to ride a bike, which is really nice.
Biking simulator.
Yes.
Biking simulator, basically. That's kind of the kitschy thing that changes it. But it's a much more vast open world. It's a third person behind the player camera. Like there's a lot of things that differentiate it from that traditional format. So that was great. Then you've got things like Killer Frequency that I just reviewed, which is it's essentially a walking sim, but it's also a real-time puzzler.
Well, that's the thing. I think you've hit the nail on the head with saying it needs to be something else. So I'll tell you one walking sim, which I genuinely, one of my favorite games, Storm Boy. Don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's just got the most absolutely beautiful story. And the way it works is you're walking along a beach, which in theory, boring, but every now and then you'll get to a sort of like point of interest and you'll engage in a mini game that progresses the story. And those mini games breaking it up are what make it so like spectacular, really, because like each one tells part of the story and you do like just walk along the beach as part of the story. There's no like combat, there's no platforming or anything. It's just walking along the beach. But engaging with those mini games really helps just to keep you into it, and the story and the way it's told is like I cried. I don't never cry in games, but I rarely cry in games, and that was one moment that I really genuinely cried at because it was so powerful. And like it wouldn't have been that powerful had it been like a regular game, like jumping around and doing all the action, because that would have made me more about the gameplay. Whereas this game, the walking sim nature of it, let it be all about the story, but the mini game stopped the walking sim part of it from being boring. So I think finding that balance between not having so much gameplay that the story misses out without it being so like there needs to be immersion in the story, but to keep that immersion, I think you do need like either puzzles or just something to differentiate it. It's not just the walking. There needs to be a mix of the walking for the story and then something else just to keep your mind engaged with it. And I think Storm Boy did that really, really well.
I think that's mainly the problem that things like Everything Gone the Rapture had. It was essentially a museum that you could walk through. And there's a lot of VR games that are very like that as well, where the assets are there, but you reach out your hand and you can't do anything with them, and you feel like you're just walking through someone else's kind of.
You need to feel like there's a point to you being there as a player rather than just watching it as a video.
And the thing is, it doesn't have to be anything monumental. It can be something quite minuscule, but it just gives you that place in the world. Like, for example, Curse of the Obra Dinn is probably a good example in the sense that you are just an insurance broker going through and establishing what happened through looking at these tableaus and incidents. But for the most part, you're just walking around a boat, looking at flashbacks. Like that's all you're doing, but you feel so involved.
And there's so much deduction involved too, and trying to figure out too. But yeah, I guess when you think about it, it is a lot of environmental storytelling, but I just think there's so much brain power put into figuring out who's who. But yeah, I guess you could consider that a walking sim as well. I never thought about Obra Dinn that way.
Essentially, if there's no other mechanic, like core mechanic other than walking around, which there really isn't aside from like selecting the thing you want to look at and then looking at it, there's no other mechanic there. So that's essentially a walking sim to me. But there are a lot of games I think that are dragging down the genre to the point where you find yourself questioning, does anyone really want a walking sim anymore? And I think they still
No.
do. I
Okay,
think they still
actually,
do.
can I hop into this point? So okay, would you consider at all like some RPG Maker games a walking sim, like games where you're following a set path and you are like you have to press buttons to like continue with dialogue and stuff. But I don't know, I played a couple of really good ones. Like I played Ib and I played Mr. Seital that I got to review recently, and I love those. But I don't know, would you consider those walking sim games because there isn't really any form of combat? Actually, Ib has a bit where you're dodging bullets in this one section, but it's an incidental thing.
If you're
But
looking at it from a really traditional point of view, like a walking sim tends to be something happening around you that's already happened,
right,
or you're just happening upon something
Mm.
as like a time capsule you've discovered. Like What Remains of Edith Finch is another example where you just
yeah,
discover this family house that you came back to, and it's all already there. You don't trigger anything, but
I think
with
it's like what would happen if you took the player out of the equation? Would it still basically be there?
yeah, and with the
okay,
RPG Maker, because there's so much dialogue and because you are a factor in that story, probably doesn't work.
yeah, because you are that player and you're like being interacted with, or you're making choices in that way.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just know if you would consider it that way because like, gameplay wise, you could say like, well, you're not really doing anything but like pressing the confirm button. Um, Also, One Reigns of Edith Finch. That's a good example. I love the storytelling in that, and God, the way you're. I think that was a really good example of a walking sim where it's like done right. Because I think the way the stories happen, they can be so amazing and horrifying, but they're so drastically different for like the death of each character in the house. And
Well, what remains of Edith Finch is essentially fixing the problems of what ones have came before, in the sense that it's given you a lot of gameplay variety, sometimes to the detriment of the game, because a lot of the mechanics in What Remains of Edith Finch aren't all that refined or
yeah,
good. Like there's one of them where you just end up being like, I think it's a dolphin or a shark or something, and you just flop around on a boat, and it's really awkward and hard to control. But it sort of works just because it's pushing forward the narrative and it's trying something different. Whereas the other games will be like, you do this one thing and you do it to the end. So it is good, and sometimes it hits, sometimes it misses. But whenever it hits, it's really good. Like I'm sure everyone knows, like the one where you're chopping fish and it's and
oh no,
you let your mind run away and it becomes this like world you've created to the point where you've completely disassociated from your job at the fish factory, and it's phenomenal. It's
that
so
one
good.
still fills me with dread, and it's such a wonderful story. But it's like, oh god, no, don't, not my hand. And then what happens. You're like, oh, that was I saw that coming, but still I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, you know what's going to happen, but the way that they present it's so incredible, and that's what walking sims are capable of doing, because it's narrative and narrative alone. You can put together these incredible short stories and do great things with them. It's the games that don't bother doing
Yeah,
that
well, that's the
really.
thing. Like, I think the developers of walking sims need to be very aware that if you're taking out that extra gameplay, you need everything else to be fully developed. You can't just like think, "Oh, I'll just do my best." Like, or do your best. Like, it needs to be your best though. They can't just think, "Oh, let's put something out there." Like, that story needs to be refined and powerful. It needs to be enough to make up for the lack of other stuff. Same with the graphics. So, like, it doesn't need to be like mind blowing, like hyper realistic or anything, but it needs to be enough to capture the attention. Like, that's the thing. I think a lot of indie developers, especially, are guilty of trying to make their games look like AAAs when they're never going to. They need to find an art style that is going to be easier for them to do on their budget while still looking good. Whereas, like, a lot of the times you get the ones that look like they've tried to go too high and just miss the mark completely. And
What you're
like,
saying is it's okay to use Unity.
well, exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like, you know, pixel games even can look really good if they've put the time into it. Like, it's very much about knowing their budget, knowing their limits as indie developers, and working with what they've got to make it the best it can be, rather than trying to compete with the AAAs, which are not their competition. The competition is other indies. Just do your best, but especially with walking sims, especially, like, you're not really going to get AAA walking sims. Like, you, well, I
No,
don't know.
I was going to bring up a point that you can go too far the other way. The one that I thought was a AAA walking sim done absolutely dreadfully, and like this will divide opinion. Death Stranding. Just
Never played it, so
I
no opinion on
love
it.
Death Stranding actually.
it's one
But
that I
it
just
was
couldn't
very
get into.
frustrating, and I understand your point, Callum. But oh
I've seen a
god,
lot, like it's very much one of those Marmite games where some people really take to it and some people just don't, and I'm one of
I
those that
have
definitely
heard good
didn't.
things about Death Stranding though, so
oh wait, so did you?
interesting.
Oh, have you played it, Malika? Or
I haven't played
yeah.
it. No,
And-
it didn't look like my kind of thing. But I'd heard that other people enjoyed it.
It came
I
out for
think I gave it
free
about-
on that big store, and I was like, oh, I'll try it. And I was like, wow.
Right.
But all right, what did you think of
I
it,
gave it
Callum?
about 4 or 5 hours. I think I gave it about 4 or 5 hours, and there's just so much going on. There's a lot of that kind of like RPG-esque menuing. There's a lot of things you need to
Yeah.
remember. The story's so like out there because it's Kojima.
Oh,
and
it's that right? It's the one with Norman Reedus.
Yes.
that's the one.
Yes, I remember
It's the
seeing the
Monster Energy
trailer
drinks.
for that. Right. Yeah, I knew I'd heard of it, and I knew it didn't look like my kind of thing, but I couldn't remember if it. Yes, okay, I'm there. I remember seeing the trailer for that, and Matt was like, "Oh, that looks so good," and I'm like, "That looks boring."
Well, Callum, you just have to play it for 10 more hours once you rebuild all the roads and it becomes a trucking sim. Then you have fun. Then it's actually a good time.
Just play Euro Truck Simulator or whatever it's called.
No, I need to feel the joy of like, I built these roads and now I get to have all of these easy missions. The challenge is gone. But it's very valid.
I've played
in that
more
game.
than enough war of attrition games in the past 2 months. I don't need that right now. The ones you just bang your head against the wall until it works, and sometimes it just doesn't.
Yeah, there's definitely that's a game where you can play it a different way and it'll feel very frustrating for that way. And the right way to play it is to like to actually take a lot of time for it. And but yeah, I'm so mixed because I really love the story. I actually teared up quite a bit at the end. I was sobbing at the end. I was like, oh, that's such a nice reveal. But yeah, you have to go through a lot of tedium to get to that point. And if you're not willing to put it in, it's like I don't blame you because there is a lot.
That could be the crux of the problem because I don't mind grinding for things. I'm very good at it, and I will put myself through some stupid stuff to get to where I need to be. But the thing I didn't like about it was it is one of those ones where you kind of have to plod along and you can't rush away through it. It's quite meticulous in the way you have to plan and stack your stuff. And like I was like, just let me do it quickly. But that's kind of beating the point of the game, and I get that.
Can I say last bit of that game? I understand I had this one organic moment where I had to cross this river for the very last mission, and my feet had worn out my boots, and I had like 8 packages that I had to like throw across this river. And at one point I fell into the river, and I was like, oh no, it's gonna sweep me into the ocean. That's it. And this mission took me about an hour and a half to get to this point. I was like, no, all of this effort. But then I stopped.
I guess it's a shallow river. You could have walked across it.
Yeah, no, it turns out you get to the end towards where you get to the ocean. I stood up just at that part. I was like, wait, I can stand. And I picked my packages and I brought it to the end. And sorry, my mic's cutting out because I'm so excited. But I was like, I did it. And I could have hated the game if I had failed that part. But because I had that organic feeling of like success. But yeah, but that was because of the gameplay for that section, and most of the walking can be very tedious and boring. So I think that's a very fair point.
I do appreciate when someone takes a big swing, and that was a big swing. It just didn't pay off for me. But like, there are great examples of people that take great swings and it works out for them. Like, there's a game called Before Your Eyes that I wrote down as well, and it's another indie. Basically, it's like a story told through someone's point of view, and you get these scenarios where you're literally using your eyes and you can swap. Oh, sorry guys, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. But yeah, I was talking about Before Your Eyes as far as I remember. But yeah, it's a very hard one to describe because it's from the point of view of someone that is essentially looking at these scenarios. You're not actually walking around, you're not actually doing that whole traditional walking sim thing, but it's very much the same format because you're receiving this narrative and you're a part of it just because you're there. So yeah, it's kind of doing that same thing. The only other thing I really wanted to discuss is the ones that really, really get it wrong. Because I could talk all day about the ones that do it very well, and if you want to see the ones that I feel do it very well, there's a whole listicle over indie game culture where you can look at the best.
Fun fact, I literally just Googled like indie walking simulators, second link.
Look at me.
I wasn't even specifically looking for indie game culture, and I was like, hey, I didn't even notice until I clicked on the link. It wasn't like I thought, oh, support us. I clicked on it because it looked the best, and it was a very good article.
That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
Because the first link on Google, I was like, what's this? This looks rubbish. I was like, oh, this second one looks good. Clicked on, I was like, I recognize this site.
Who's that guy? But yeah, they're all the good ones, but there are a lot of ones that, in recent memory even that were really bad. So I just wanted to talk about a few of them. One of them that stood out for me, and like it's one of those you could call a walking sim. So guys, because of technical issues, we're probably not going to chat about this a little bit longer than we would have liked to, but that was the big discussion on walking sims. Are they dead? Are they not? It turns out they're actually not dead, but they are evolving and changing, and there's something a little bit different. So I hope you enjoyed. Malika is returning to us, but we're going to wrap it up there. We're sorry for the little outages at the end. These things happen in the world of media. Everyone say goodbye.
Bye.
See you, everyone.